Hey everyone, Casey here. Welcome to In Session with Casey Arbenz, a new podcast where we dive deep into the heart of the legal system. Along with my co-host, Reese Ellis, and an incredible lineup of guests, we'll tackle everything from personal injury to criminal defense. Together, we'll explore culturally relevant issues, revisit landmark cases, and share the real stories behind the verdicts, the people impacted by the law, and those fighting to bring them to justice.
Hi guys, welcome back to In Session with Casey Arbenz. You'll notice we're on video now, so you can see the faces behind the voices.
I gotta stop scowling.
I know, I actually have to focus, and I'm such a person who moves around 400 times when I'm in school or at work, so I gotta really focus this time.
Totally. Yeah.
So, this time we're gonna be talking about legal ethics.
Yeah.
So I've done a bunch of research on things that people who are not lawyers don't know about the ethics behind the law, which is super, super important because practicing ethically is a big deal.
Yeah.
So when you were in law school, how did they approach teaching ethics to you?
Yeah. So, a lot of law school is based on teaching you what will be on the bar exam. And most of what's on the bar exam when it comes to ethics are things like conflicts of interest,
right.
which is, can you both personally represent the person? I would say okay, let's say somebody comes that wants to hire me for an assault and I learned that the victim was my brother. Right. Like I shouldn't take that case, right? Because I'm conflicted. I love my brother. I'm supposed to be fighting for my client.
Yeah,
that's a conflict. The other type that we see in criminal defense is two folks get indicted for drug dealing, the same conspiracy. Well, I can't represent both of them because very likely one of them might want to flip on the other and rat out the other one. And so there's a conflict of interest. And that's kind of the bar exam. But where you really learn about ethics is the easiest place to learn about it is in the back of the monthly bar news that we all get as lawyers. And it talks about all the reasons people get disbarred. Mm-hmm. And there's the big three, right? There's lying, stealing. There's being a lousy lawyer, which means not being competent or diligent.
To the best of your ability.
To your best of your ability. But within professional boundaries, you got to be
sure.
You pass the bar, you should know how to do certain things. And then there's sleeping with your client, right? And so those are the big ones where it's you just need to know you can never do that stuff. Otherwise, you're going to get yourself in big trouble. And so that was partly law school, partly bar exam prep, and then partly learning from other folks who made those very poor decisions. But ultimately, it's kind of the golden rule, right? Do unto others as you would do unto yourself, and that sort of thing.
So then when you started here at PLG, which obviously was not your first being an attorney gig, but I assume when I was in school learning how to do PR, that was my major, public relations.
Right.
We had to take an ethics class, and at the end of my ethics class, the professor made us write a personal and a professional code of ethics so that we had something to add to our portfolio. Yeah. Do you have a written document, or is it more just in your brain about codes of ethics as far as Casey Arbenz Law or Puget Law Group? Yeah,
every human being has their own system, right, for doing the right thing, whether that's the golden rule. And what I always took from law school was kind of the why of the law. And so when it came to ethics, I always wanted to know why we don't steal from our clients, why we don't have conflicts of interest, why we must be competent and diligent, why we shouldn't sleep with our clients. And so to me, whenever there's maybe an issue that could raise an ethical quandary, I'm going, well, yeah, obviously, because the why is so ingrained in my head, which to me at this stage in my life is sort of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would want done unto you. And I wouldn't want to hire a lawyer who does any of those things or who's conflicted in their representation of me. And so, I have my own code for sure. I think most of us people have our own code and most lawyers have their own code, but I find that they're generally universal codes that are, follow the law, do right by others, fight hard, all that.
Well, this jumps down the line of my questions a little bit, but we're totally right there. So does it bother you that like we're talking about ethics kind of vary person to person?
Sure.
Does that bother you that like something, obviously there's like the ethics on the bar,
Right.
don't do blah, blah, blah. But then there's also ethics as far as like how close you can push to the line, right?
Yeah.
And those are the ones that vary more person to person about what some people find ethical and some people don't.
Yeah.
And like the way I think about ethics is very much the way, in a math class, it's like A plus B equals C and there's really no incorrect. Yeah. That's,
right.
That's how it is. But in literature, as long as you can prove it, the teacher would usually give you a good grade if you could back up your thing. So with ethics, I've always approached it that way of like, if you can back up why you feel that way, then, and it's legit, then like, okay, it might be ethical.
Yeah, I think a good faith argument
for
something is something that lawyers oftentimes have to deal with. Like I might have a client who has a claim that's maybe meritorious in their mind and arguably meritorious, but legally may not be. And so then, there is that line sometimes where you're going, all right, like, I'll try, but understand that I'm not going to push it to an area where you or I get in trouble. And now the good news about like half of my practice, which is criminal defense, one of the things when you're actually sworn in to be a lawyer is that there's, and I don't have it memorized cold, but it's something along the lines of, I will never argue an unmeritorious position unless it's in defense of a person charged with a criminal offense. And so they do kind of give criminal defense attorneys some leeway, recognizing that oftentimes people who are accused might have a theory on their case that the lawyer doesn't totally buy, but in their duty to their client, they're going to, proceed.
So like, how do you decide if a client comes to you, criminal defense, let's say, the client comes to you and says, this is what happened. I'm sure there's cases where it's like, okay, obviously you're in the right house here, and somehow this all got screwed up, and we're going to help you, and yay, we're on the right side.
Yeah.
But I would imagine that sometimes you look at a person and you're like, you might have done that. Yeah. This doesn't seem stand up.
Sure.
Where do you draw the line of like in the United States, it's like everyone is innocent until proven guilty, and everyone deserves what is it? Everyone deserves a lawyer. Okay, yeah. But like, I think I would struggle with that. Like if I thought you might have done that and I might be on your team helping you get away with something against another person who did nothing wrong.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to think about this. And I don't think that what I'm going to say is just a really thoughtful way around the ethical quandary. And I would start with just first and foremost, like I'm not a judgmental person by nature. I think a lot of people like judging maybe in little snippets, right? Like they don't want to like a certain person who drives a certain type of car. Or they don't want to like a person who wears a certain type of clothes. Right. Or they don't like people based on their ages or whatever, where they live, or what their background is, what they do for a living. I like to think I don't ever think that way. It's not something I spend much time on, and I like to think I'm looking for the best in everybody. So that's my starting point. But then it becomes very easy. It's those things you said, right? Like we live in a free country. We live in a country where we don't believe that people are guilty until they prove themselves innocent. It's the opposite, right? And, Robert Shapiro, a famous lawyer, had this quote after the OJ trial where he said, we live in a country where, because of our system, 100 guilty people might walk so that no single innocent person is wrongfully convicted. And that starts with all of the rights that are enumerated in the Constitution, right? You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to counsel. You have the right to not, be tried by anybody except a jury of your peers. And to me, and probably even more importantly, the government bears the burden of proof. And so if the government can't prove its case, even if you're obviously guilty, if they can't prove it through testimony and through exhibits, then you are maybe not innocent, but you're not guilty under the law.
Under the law.
And so to me, like, you either believe that stuff or you don't. And if you don't, then tell me where you want to live, where they have a different system that you actually think is better, and make a good argument for why. And I would probably say that argument has a lot more holes in it than the argument for.
I'm not an international legal scholar. Sure. I don't know anything about the legal systems of other countries. Yeah. But I just meant, like, I think it would be hard for me to represent anyone that I even thought you might be lying a little bit. Yeah.
You definitely wouldn't want to do what I do.
Yeah,
honestly.
Probably not.
Because, I mean, undoubtedly I have had many guilty clients, and I have taken their cases to trial and won. And I don't feel anything bad about it. All I say is the state couldn't prove it. And I don't want to live in a country where people are convicted when the state can't prove it.
That's true.
And so that becomes very easy ethically for me to go, it's not my job. Like, first of all, I was never there. Right? Yeah. Like, I was never in the bank when it got robbed. I was never, in the frat house when there was a rape. I was never, at the airport when there was a hijacking. Like, I don't know what happened. And the government has the duty to bring in credible witnesses and exhibits that show that my client is the guilty party. If they can't do that, if they're just trying to browbeat or pound the table and force feed guilt without actual evidence, then we're going to start having truly innocent people getting convicted regularly. And so, I just go, look, I wasn't there. Like, I'm just going to go with the evidence, and I'll look at the evidence. And one thing that you can't do ethically is what we call suborn perjury. So if my client says, hey, I did it, but I'm going to testify that I didn't, I have to withdraw from that case, because I can't ethically call my client to the witness stand and say, all right,
because it's everything under the law. So it's like, as you're right, as long as if the law can't prove it, then you weren't there. But, and it's the same thing about calling up someone you know is guilty to the stand. Under the law, you ethically cannot.
I can know they're guilty in my mind.
But if there's,
told me they're not
if they came
guilty,
to you and said, hey, I did this, but I need you to misrepresent the case.
Exactly.
And I need you
won't do that.
Yeah.
I'm not going to have them lie under oath to something I know that they've told me is different. And so that's the distinction. And so that's called suborning perjury. And a lot of great lawyers have had to withdraw on cases because then they don't tell the court why, but they say, look, Judge, I have a major ethical quandary here. I cannot proceed because your client has a constitutional right to testify if they want to. But the attorney can't ask questions that he or she knows are going to elicit a false statement. And so those can get a little complicated in there. But, that's why most attorneys, we don't, and sometimes clients get frustrated by this, but I don't sit down and say, hey, what happened? Or what did you do? Or did you do it? Like, I don't ask those questions. What I always tell clients is, look, I'm in your corner. I'm going to review the state's evidence in this case, or the federal government's evidence, or whatever. And I'm going to come to you and I'm going to point out the areas where I'm concerned that they might be able to prove their case. And then eventually I will say, if we're headed towards trial, A, do you want to testify? B, if you want to testify, what do you want to testify to? And so that's how we do it. And so if someone comes in at that first meeting and says, I did it, then all of a sudden it's, well, you're not going to be able to testify that you didn't do it.
Right.
So that's probably the ethical thing. But I do think that a lot of your concerns are probably hyped up by like TV and movies.
Of course.
And,
of course. No, totally.
It's not, it doesn't usually go down the way the movies and TV portray it.
Yeah.
And you just have to say, like, look, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened. Like, people say it. Like, and I talk to my friends about this all the time. And they're like, well, he's obviously guilty. And I go, based on what, right? Like the news reports, like what the police think. Like, no, there could have been shortcuts
that can
there.
Be twisted.
Yeah, exactly. And those are people's prejudices. And that's how, again, innocent people get convicted because everybody knows he or she did it. And
oh my God. Yeah. I recently watched the, again, a TV thing because that's all. Yeah. But I recently watched the, oh my God, it's not a docuseries, it's a show, but it's like based on a true story, historical fiction, I guess you could say,
right,
about the Amanda Knox case.
Yeah,
Have
sure.
you seen it?
Yeah.
Oh my God. First of all, didn't know she was from Seattle.
Yep.
Crazy.
Foxy Knoxy.
Yeah. And like, I really, the whole time I was watching it, I was like, I do see why people thought whatever they thought about her, but even if what they thought was true, she did not kill that girl.
Yeah.
So you don't have to be a stand-up human, which I'm not saying she's not a stand-up person.
Yeah.
I don't know her. But even if, say, you were like, oh, that girl kind of goes against my values, that doesn't mean she killed her.
Totally. In that case, I was in Italy when she was in prison and heading towards trial in 2008. I think it's 2008 or maybe 2005 or 6. I was there twice. And that case had a ton of press coverage, here locally, but also in Italy. And I kind of assumed she was probably guilty based on the things I heard in the media. And it wasn't until later when I learned a little bit more about, frankly, who the prosecutor was and learned about some of the other folks that had been involved, and then started hearing about the actual evidence. And to me, there was a ton of reasonable doubt. And I think
everything was reasonable. I was watching that show going, oh my God. And in hindsight, 2020, it's a show and like blah, blah. But I think most, if not all of that evidence, at least that I saw, was questionable.
It was totally circumstantial. And there were several other people who had a motive. And frankly,
the guy that most likely did it, I can't remember what his name
kind
is.
Of a drifter,
Yeah, he had DNA evidence attached there too. And so it was just like, and he had a criminal background. I can't remember exactly what it was. But regardless, I watched that. So I see what you're saying.
That was, what I remember being most striking to me, and something I deal with occasionally in my practice, was how dogmatic the prosecutor was. The prosecutor clearly, from an early stage, believed that she was guilty, decided it was her, and then really bent the rules to try to prove that it was her. And I was really impressed that the Court of Appeals in Italy overturned her conviction, because I thought very much after I spent some time researching and looking into it that she was wrongfully convicted. And so that's why we have an appellate process in the U.S. also. But I think, kind of getting back to what we were talking about earlier, like that's what can happen if we don't have a very strong system. And frankly, prosecutors are supposed to be held to even higher standard. In Washington, they're called quasi-judicial officers. So they're supposed to actually not just try to win. Their job is to see that justice is done. And so once they start to question whether the person is actually guilty, they're supposed to let the defense know all their reasons why. And frankly, should take their foot off the gas on how aggressively they prosecute something. Because if they have doubts, then they shouldn't be going forward. Because if there's any doubt, like that's probably means that it's not enough to convict. And so, that was a good example of what I consider to be an unjust prosecution.
Yeah. And again, that was an international case. So I don't know exactly how everything goes there versus here and blah, blah. But they decided it was her. And from what I saw in the show, which could not be exactly accurate, the country of Italy needed to find out who killed this girl because it was an international safety issue for them. They didn't want people to feel like if a crime is committed in Italy, we can't figure out who it is.
Yeah, for sure.
So it was...
But not a good reason.
No, of course not.
Right.
But because it's also not keeping anyone safer, but it looks like you're keeping people safer. And that, I was just like, this poor girl, that really could happen to anybody. If it could happen to her, it could happen to anybody.
Yeah. She was in another country. Luckily, she spoke the language, but she, was away from her parents, and away from our system, and she was incarcerated. Like, she had to have felt very alone for a long time, very scared.
Well, and they misled her. They made her think that she was helping them find
the real killer,
but they were trying to get her to convict herself. It was crazy.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. It's crazy. She's from Seattle. I follow her on Instagram and stuff, and she's done a lot of work with the Innocence Project.
Yeah,
and
I've seen
things, focused on helping people who have maybe been wrongfully convicted. And I like to think she's used her situation for the better. And it really is a tragedy what happened to her.
It is. But yeah, it does seem like she is moving forward with her life.
Yeah.
But oh my God, it just like gives me the chills to think, yeah, I can. That my anxiety could run wild about that.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh my God, that's insane.
And also, I know she spoke really good Italian, but nuances, like if police are questioning you, you're tired, I know that
and emotions are involved.
Yeah, they had experimented with some drugs and stuff too. So like, what level was she coming down? But like, she could say something that is mistranslated and makes her sound more liable or guilty than what she was actually intending to say. And that happens in the US too, right? Like not everybody speaks perfect English, and police, they're trying to get what they want. And so they might use a nuance of our language to make somebody sound like they're being inconsistent or being untruthful.
Is it true that police are often trained to testify?
Oh, totally. Yeah.
See, I never knew that.
Training.
You know how I
They're
found that out?
professional witnesses.
Yes, I did not know that. And again, I've learned a lot since starting this job.
Sure.
I never really thought about this type of stuff.
Yeah.
But I was digging through the Puget Law Group video files. Yeah. And so I was watching a bunch of you guys' old promotional videos. And I was watching a woman from the law firm, can't remember her name, looked super smart and official, say that she was talking about DUIs and how the police officers are professional witnesses.
Yeah.
That to me struck a chord of like, wait, is that something, like, can you explain that? Of like, is that a good thing?
Well, I think at some level, police need to know when they're at the academy that they're going to get called to testify. And so I think the taxpayer would say, well, if we know these folks are going to testify, then they should be good at it.
Of course.
To the average juror, it can be very dangerous because they could appear much more persuasive than they deserve to be. I think it's no big deal because that's like my first question in cross-examination is, okay, so you went to the academy, right? You were there for 6 months, right? And one of the things that you learned was how to testify, right? Yes. And they taught you about looking presentable, right? They talked to you about dressing the part, right? They talked to you about eye contact with the jury. And so now all the things the jurors just heard, they're going, okay, well, yeah, he or she looked at me the whole time. They look very presentable. They're speaking extremely well, talking in a good pace, all of these things. And so I kind of use it against them to say, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, like, look, they had to bring on this professional witness to convince you.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So there's ways around it. So I don't sweat it too bad, but yeah, no, I mean, they totally are. And to a lawyer, a defense lawyer who's not prepared or hasn't sat through enough trials to have the confidence to ask those kind of questions, it can sway the jury negatively. It could lead to an innocent conviction.
Yeah, that makes sense. Have you, when I was researching and writing the questions I wanted to ask you for this episode, my mind immediately went to ethics behind a case. I didn't really think about courtroom ethics, which to me seems like with doctors, it's like bedside manner. And then when I was looking into it, courtroom ethics, I was like, okay, that reminds me of the doctor bedside manner. First off, is that ish okay?
I'd say I think lawyers need to have bedside manner more with how they work with their clients in terms of like answering questions or sitting in a conference room with them, like being a counselor at some level and returning their calls, returning their texts, right? Like making them feel like you're taking care of them. That to me, that's the bedside manner, and being kind, not being judgmental, being understanding, talking to their family members, assuring them that the lawyer's doing everything they can do to help them. So that's to me more the bedside manner. In court, as we talked about, I think in episode 1, it's a show, right? Like you're on stage for the jury, and so I will even sometimes act frustrated with my client if it might serve what I'm trying to show the jury in the case, and so that's a little different. Now, you still have to have ethics in the courtroom. In fact, you have to have impeccable ethics, right? I never want to mislead even the other side. I don't want to be dishonest to the court, to the judge. I don't want to be dishonest to the jury. And so what you're doing is you are showing the highest level of ethics, and both as part of the case and like the stage aspect of it, but also like if I'm talking to the judge, like I'm not going to say anything that's not true. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to misrepresent. I'm not going to try to, there's a term called fraud on the court. Like lawyers can get in trouble if they're trying to like sell something that's like obviously false. And so you definitely don't want to do that. And then some defense lawyers want to go to war with the prosecutor on every case and be rude or underhanded. Like to me, that's not a good way to go ever. And I mean, I'll fight back for sure. And when I feel that a prosecutor is taking shortcuts or doing underhanded things, I will definitely call them out on it. But generally, I try to be the one who's the most ethical in the courtroom every time.
Have you seen in the courtroom people behave in a way that was unethical?
Yes.
Did they have to get removed from the courtroom?
Well, I mean, I've had outbursts and stuff where people had to be removed, not from other lawyers, luckily. So, but I have been in trials where prosecutors have done things and defense attorneys on civil cases that I thought were highly questionable, and I've gone so far as to call them out to the court, to the judge, not when the jury's present, but outside the presence of the jury. And it's uncomfortable, right? Like nobody wants their ethics called into question, but sometimes you have to.
Right. So we were talking about earlier about if someone admits to you that they're guilty, you can't take it. Is there anything else?
Well, I can take it. I can still take the case.
If they say to you, yes, they can't testify. You cannot allow them to testify.
Yep. Cool. Yep. And it happens a lot, right? So I'll say, okay, understood. So here's the deal. We can work out a plea bargain, right? I can still go to the prosecutor with, you can't prove the case, because they can't make my client testify, right? Because my client has the right to remain silent. Right. So client has the option to testify. And usually they listen to me, because there's been a lot of cases where I tell my client, you should not testify. Maybe not even because they told me they did it, then I'm not going to have them testify. If they tell me they're going to lie, I can't let them testify. I have to get off the case. But they actually have a right to testify. But oftentimes I'll say, I think you would be foolish to testify because you're going to not be credible. You're not going to be able to explain your story, or you've got baggage, right? Because sometimes the court has already ruled that like a person's prior conviction can come into the trial, wouldn't come in unless they testify. And so I'll say, you're not testifying, in my opinion. Yeah. Now, but then the judge will say, right, when we're about to close our case, they'll look at our clients and say, now, Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so, you have the right to testify. And luckily, 99% of my clients listen to what I say. So they'll say, Judge, I'm declining to testify. I'm advising counsel or whatever. And that's fine. So, but yeah, no, I mean, guilty clients that tell me they're guilty.
Yeah. They just can't testify.
Yeah. And they don't testify. And then my argument to the jury is just that, look, the state can't prove it. They don't have the evidence.
Which I guess really is just the bottom line.
Yep. Yeah.
What would it take for you to reject a case if someone came to you and you were just, because you don't have to take every client that calls. Yeah. What type of cases would you say, I don't think I'm going to take this one?
I really wouldn't say that there's any that I won't take because, again, I believe they have a right to counsel. They have the right to counsel of their choice. I think there have been a few cases where a person has explained something very graphic and horrible to me where I've thought, gosh, if I'm going to go to trial on this, I have to be able to, with a straight face, fight for this person. But I mean, we're talking like 3 cases in 17 years where I've been like, I'm a little squeamish on this. So what I'll usually do is refer them on to somebody else. And maybe somebody else in my firm who's not going to have that struggle. But from an early stage, I thought of this when we were talking earlier about today's episode. And I'm a pretty law-abiding person. I want to live in a safe community, and I have no problem with police in general. And I want there to be police. I want communities to be safe. I want people who are guilty of crimes to, have to be held accountable. And that's in my personal life. And that was how I was raised, and that's sort of the person I was even through law school. And I still am. And I do remember, and I wanted to be a prosecutor. That was actually where I started and what I wanted to do at first. And I remember when I switched to defense, one of the first motions I argued was on behalf of a client who was in prison and who who committed a vicious beating of his wife that caused permanent facial damage, right? Like she was still blind in one eye and horrific scarring. It was just like a sadistic, brutal, awful attack. And I remember as I was arguing the motion on behalf of that client, like having this just cognitive dissonance and like just this stress, like, oh my gosh, like what have I become? Right? Like I'm arguing on behalf of this person who did this, who's been convicted of.
That's what I was talking about earlier. That feeling. Like,
So, but I was making arguments about the Constitution and about his trial and some things that had happened in his trial that we didn't think were constitutionally valid. And so I just said, after I left, I was driving home. I was up in Bellingham. As I was driving home, I thought, well, what are your core values and what are your core beliefs? And at some level, you're a cog in the system, right? Like the bad guy, the assailant, the police are after him. The prosecution is after him. In this case, the court had, allowed for him at some level to be convicted. All those parts of the system are against him, but he only has you, right? Like he only has the defense. He's got one person in his corner, and that person is using the Constitution as a shield. And so then the question for me was just, do you believe in the Constitution? And I was like, absolutely. Like that, we're lucky to have it. It's the greatest in the world, I believe. And it provides rights to people to avoid wrongful convictions. And if you believe in the Constitution, then whatever the person's accused of really shouldn't matter, because your job is to make sure that their rights are protected, because everybody else is coming after them. And so after that, I thought, frankly, this sounds corny. It's way braver to be on the defense side than on the prosecution side, right? Like it's always easy to wear the white hat. It's hard to stand up for the little guy or stand up for the accused. And so I started to really have a lot of admiration, and it's hard to be hated, right? Like I was, in fact, in that case, there was about 100 people in the courtroom, and there was the wind, like the air got sucked out of this huge crowded courtroom when the prosecutor started talking about the allegations and the facts. And I mean, I'm sitting there like wearing the black hat, helping the bad guy. But to me, that's what bravery is, right? That's like when you're willing to be hated, when you're willing to stand up, like that's the most important part of the system. Everybody wants to be the good guy. And so to me, the ethical thing is actually to make sure that that person's rights were protected. And I don't know if I mentioned this in one of our previous episodes. I think you and I talked about it. Like John Adams is a hero of mine. John Adams, one of the founders. Yeah, exactly. Second president. So he's, he was a colonialist. He was very much anti-British rule, right? He was one of the founding fathers who rebelled against the British crown when the American Revolution occurred. But there was the Boston Massacre, in which British troops shot a bunch of local Bostonians and killed them. And, here he is, this patriot of the United States, a rebel against Britain. And it would have been so easy for him to say, string those British soldiers up. They committed murder against citizens here in Boston. And what did he do? He defended the British soldiers in their trial because he believed that there was going to be mob rule and that they might be wrongfully convicted. And there was evidence to suggest that the folks that the riot that happened, they were egging on these soldiers. And he looked at it from their perspective, which is they're in a foreign country. They've been tasked with maintaining the peace. And they got people throwing beer bottles and stuff at them, and shots got fired, people got killed. But he believed so strongly in the Constitution that he was going to help create for our country that he took on that very unpopular task of defending British soldiers on American soil. And to me, that's like the bravest thing. And so after I kind of thought it through, I was like, this is easy for me. Like, I got no problem. If anybody wants to go toe to toe with me on an ethical or moral debate, I'd say, you know what? Enjoy North Korea, enjoy China, enjoy Russia, enjoy a country where we don't have these rights and we don't have people brave enough to stand up to the government. And that's what we do.
Yeah. I think I might have a little differing opinion of you
go
here.
for it. Yeah, of course.
Okay.
You wouldn't be the only one.
Okay. I totally hear what you're saying,
Yeah.
and I completely respect what you're saying because you have really thought it through. You know so much about the law. You've taken a lot of cases and a lot of clients, all of that. I think this just goes back to what we were talking about earlier about how there are some ethical quandaries that it's not math, it's more like literature, where as long as you can back it up.
Yeah.
And I think you've backed up your point really well. So I respect it.
Sure.
And I completely can acknowledge that. I don't think and this could be emotions getting in the way, but I don't know if I could do that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could be in a courtroom and hear someone talk about what my client did or allegedly did.
Right.
But then you're seeing violence, I think would really be hard for me.
Sure.
If someone was like violently.
That's why there's corporate law,
right?
Or you could be a prosecutor. Like there's if you're a lawyer, there's nobody's obligated to do criminal defense. But,
and also there's a reason why I'm not a lawyer. So
right. Yeah,
I'm just thinking about it holistically.
But I'll tell you what, Reese, if you ever have kids and one of your kids is accused of crime, even if you know they did it or you think they did it, you're going to want a good lawyer in their corner.
Yeah.
And so my friends who get, you're not that you are, but right, people who get self-righteous on this, how can you defend those scumbags? Well, would their kids get in trouble?
Of course.
Their brother, their mom, their dad, whoever has a bad day, does something horrific, DUI, kills somebody. What do? Who do they call first?
Of course.
Yeah, they call me. And what do they want? Do they want me to go, well, he's pretty guilty, so I'm not going to do much? No, they want their loved ones' rights protected, and they want to make sure that they get the very best.
Yeah.
So
of course, because that's emotional. I guess something I'm also learning about as we keep talking about this is probably an obvious statement, but the way you approach the law, at least, is not emotional at all.
It's pretty.
It's very.
What do you call
is there evidence?
Empath.
Yeah, you're not an empath in this.
No.
Which you could be an empath behind the scenes with your client, with bedside manner.
Yeah.
But probably when you're practicing the law and you're going, so American legal system is set against the Constitution, right? Which is written down. Like there's no, you can agree with it, disagree with it, say, this sounds kind of questionable, whatever, but it says what it says. And that's what you're trying to uphold as a lawyer.
Right.
And that's what you get sworn or
we're sworn to do.
Yeah, that's what you're sworn to do. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah. Look, there's a lot of jobs that I'm not cut out for.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And so to me, and it took me a while to sort of accept being hated or put judge or put in the corner of like the scumbag defense attorneys, the slime balls and all that. That wasn't really what I think I strove to be at any point until I was one. And then I found that it was actually a very important role in our society and did more research into the great lawyers of our history. And, it's a tough job, but to me, nothing's worth doing unless it's hard.
Right.
And so I draw a lot of inspiration from taking a stand, being unpopular, and being consistent.
Yeah. And I really understand what you're saying about 8 people have to walk free so that one innocent person. Yeah. I get that. That's not a super fun statistic to think about, but I feel that way about other types of topics too. So I really do get that. I guess that's why I wanted to have this episode was because when we've talked about stuff in the past, there have been things that I have just been like, I want to dive deeper into that. Yep. And so I thought this was a really important topic.
It's the question I get more than any other question. That, I don't go to a lot of cocktail parties, but if you call it that, people go, how can you do that? How can you defend that person? And it's one of the questions I always ask in jury selection. And I talk about a story because I remember my mom would tell me that what she calls her potluck group, my mom's been hanging with the same ladies.
Does she have like a dinner party club? That's really cute.
Yeah, she does every month.
That's really cute.
For like 60 years.
Amazing.
She's 81, so her whole life. And she has friends who are like, how can he do that? If I was on his jury, I would convict. I see that defendant sitting next to the slimy defense attorney, and I just go, I wonder what he did. I wonder all the things that he did that he's not getting charged with. And so that's actually one of the ways I open jury selection. It's like, who thinks that way? And no judgment for me. I need to know, right?
Yeah.
Because I want
you need
to try to keep him off the jury. But, or at least educate them on John Adams, right? Or educate them on our system, educate folks on innocence until proven guilty. And so to me, it's very common. It's a very understood belief. And, again, getting back to TVs and movies, they tend to run with that sort of stereotype of the defense attorney being a slime ball. But if you're asking my opinion, I would say that there are a lot more slime ball prosecutors than there are defense attorneys. And my prosecutor friends will balk at that, tell me I'm crazy. And I'll just say, look, you guys, when you guys do something underhanded, an innocent person can get convicted. All we're doing is saying, you got to prove it. And you can't just prove it through bullying or through, well, like you say, really well-trained, stand-up looking police officers who speak the language and who have all the resources of the government on their side. Like all my client has is me. And they don't have police and police vehicles and computers in their cars and guns on their hips and stations they can take people to and lawyers at the drop of a hat and all the resources of law enforcement and the state. If you can't convict somebody, you have all of that at your disposal, you're going to blame the defense attorney. Like, get real. Like, this is your fuck up. Not mine.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Have you ever seen Legally Blonde?
Oh, totally. Yeah, great movie.
There's I haven't seen it in a while, but that's one of my favorite movies. There's that scene where they're in the law school. They're at law school and they're in the classroom, and she's feuding with Selma Blair, and so she's like, I'm actually going to be the defense attorney because I like a challenge. Right. Do you relate to that? I do. It is a very challenging profession, and we've talked about like Iron Man and stuff like that. Like life to me, there's that quote from John F. Kennedy that says, "We do things not because they're easy, but because they're hard." And I'm always talking to our lawyers and our staff here at PLG because I'm like, this is a hard job. Like, if you're not cut out for a hard job, then God bless you, move on. That's fine. I want things hard in life. I want to accomplish hard tasks. It's like climbing a mountain, right? Like you climb a mountain knowing it's going to be hard, right? But that's why you do it. Like, nobody just lays in bed all day and feels like they accomplished something. Nobody watches reality TV all day and feels, man, what a day. Like I am so proud of how I spent my 78 years on earth doing stuff that's hard, stuff that's unpopular, but you believe to be righteous. That's life. And so to me, it's kind of an easy thing, but I totally understand. Like my wife's a estate planning and probate lawyer. She does great work. She does amazing stuff for her clients. Yeah, we need people to do that. We need people to do it. And that's what she's capable of doing and does a great job. And she has no interest in doing what I do. Yeah. I certainly don't think anything less of her for that. Of course not. But there's different types of hard things. Yeah, right. And what one person considers hard, someone doesn't. Yeah. Someone else doesn't. Yeah. And so I do feel like, I don't know if I asked you this on mic or if we were talking about it behind the scenes once, but I think I said like, what's the difference between you and me? What's the difference between what should I look for about a good lawyer and a bad lawyer? Right. And that does seem to be something, is like someone who finds this hard job, a challenge they can conquer. Yeah. They're passionate about achieving something great. And achieving this great thing. And to me, I'll admit, like a really guilty client, really bad facts, really tough trial. Like I want to win. So I'm going to win. I'm going to win ethically, but I'm going to win. Like I want to win. And I go into it believing I can win. And I'm not going to say I've won every trial because I haven't, but I have certainly won a lot more than I've lost. And I think that is why I love it. It's the challenge. Do you get stressed out? Yeah. I'm like now feeling like because I know you do all these triathlons with your family and stuff in your free time. And I'm like, it's all the lens is coming into focus now. It all makes sense because I think your job sounds super stressful. Yeah. That sounds like a great way to relieve stress. Yeah. So now I'm like really starting to understand you. Yeah. No, it's true. I mean, I exercise to relieve the stress and because it's hard. Yeah. The job of being a lawyer, people put a lot of weight on your shoulders, right? Like they're putting their whole life on you. And that is very stressful. Having very tough cases is stressful.
difficult clients. It's stressful. Difficult prosecutors. It's stressful. Being belittled or mocked or made fun of or whatever can be stressful. But, again,
yeah, I understand.
That's what you want out of life. So I'm cool with it. It's challenging but rewarding, and I get a lot of hugs from a lot of grandmas, and moms and dads. And it's like when you fight hard for somebody, and they're just so thankful that you did, and they hug you and say thank you for fighting for my kid.
Of course,
that's pretty rewarding, and you don't get that, in a lot of areas of profession. So that's special too. I don't need it necessarily, but I would be lying if I said I didn't appreciate it or see the value in really helping somebody.
Well, I'm sure it contributes to the why of like, why am I doing this really hard, stressful job?
Yeah, for sure. So there's a bunch of reasons, and I get a rush out of it too. Right?
I'm sure.
I enjoy it, but it can be very stressful.
Yeah. Well, I'm not staring at the clock, but I'm almost certain we've totally gone off our time. So do you have a quick tip about anything you would say to practicing lawyers about practicing the law ethically?
So my first boss as a defense attorney was a tremendous, well-known trial lawyer named Monty Hester. And he said, fight for your clients, fight hard, but never do anything that risks your bar card. So never do anything that risks your license.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really good, strong attitude to have is, look, I'm going to do everything I can for you, but I'm not going to do something that's unethical. I'm not going to lie, cheat, or steal.
Of course.
I'm not going to be a lousy lawyer. I'm not going to not do the research I need to do. And I'm not going to sleep with you. So that's just don't do anything stupid.
Yeah.
Or just, it doesn't pass the smell test of what's right versus what's wrong. Your job, because again, my job's not to be the judge. My job's not to be the jury. My job's not to be the prosecutor.
Yeah, you're not playing God.
You
just want it to be proven if someone's going to go to jail. And I understand that. I really do.
Yeah.
There's a reason I don't do what you do. But I'm really glad. I've been really interested to talk about this kind of stuff with you. So I'm glad we did.
Yeah, me too.
That kind of wraps it up on my end. Is there anything else you want to say?
No, I mean, I think this was a really valuable podcast to do, or episode. And, I think I appreciate that you're asking tough questions. They're, like I said, I get them all the time, and I want you and everybody else to feel comfortable asking because I don't take any offense to the question. It's a good question. It's a question I would ask before doing defense work. So it's important, but it kind of gets to greater narrative, which is what's Ted Lasso say? Be curious, not judgmental, right? Like people want to be judgmental of people. They want to be judgmental of lawyers, of criminal lawyers. They want to be judgmental of everybody, right? For all sorts of reasons. But if you actually ask them some questions and figure out what makes them tick and why they are who they are, and I do that with my clients. Like I start asking them questions about their background. Like, okay, you're accused of something horrific, child molestation. But when I ask them, tell me about your childhood. And they're like, well, I was in a foster house and I was abused sexually by my foster father. Well, okay, right? Like that's horrific too. And very likely contributed to the terrible things that you've done. I find myself being much less judgmental when I ask questions and I listen to people.
Well, typically in any situation, legal or not, the more you talk, the more you know, the less it's harder to be judgmental when you know more about people.
And I think societally, we're real quick to judge, right?
Because everyone has a 15-second attention span. Exactly. So you see something that's this small and it's super easy to make it's good versus evil. Yep. Which category does it fall into?
It's much more often in the gray.
Yeah. And I'm not a black and white thinker. I'm a very gray thinker.
Yeah.
I've learned a lot on this.
Good.
Great. So tune in next time and like and subscribe and do all the things. And we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Reese.